Welcome back to Life Stories, where true emotions meet unforgettable moments. Today's tale is about betrayal, quiet revenge, and the unexpected strength that comes from letting go. It's a story of a man who gave his heart for 7 years, only to be deceived by the person he trusted most. But instead of falling apart, he chose to rise, calmly, powerfully, and on his own terms. Subscribe now to follow every twist, every lesson, and every breath of healing in today's powerful journey. Now, let's begin today's story. 7 years. That morning, the weight of those years sat heavy on my chest as I stared at the ceiling of our bedroom in Maplewood, a quiet suburb just outside the city. 7 years of marriage with Jessica. 7 years of memories, routines, and the small rituals that once felt sacred. But lately, everything had become mechanical, distant, like two strangers brushing past each other in a shared hallway. I rose early, trying to salvage something of the day, our anniversary. I remember thinking it still mattered, at least to me. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the smell of burnt toast wafting through from the kitchen. She had left it in the toaster too long again, probably distracted by her phone. It had become her constant companion, more familiar to her than my face. I placed a small bouquet of lilies on the kitchen table, white, soft, the kind she used to adore. She once told me lilies reminded her of her grandmother's garden back in Vermont, a place she always spoke of with warmth. But I wasn't sure she even remembered that anymore. Jessica breezed into the kitchen around 7:30, her heels clicking against the tiles. Her blonde hair was pulled tight in a bun, efficient, flawless. She didn't look at me, didn't even glance at the flowers. Her eyes were glued to her phone screen, her fingers flying across the glass. "Morning," she muttered. "Morning," I replied softly. Then I added, "Happy anniversary." She paused, looked up. I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt? Surprise? It vanished too quickly to name. "Oh, right. Thanks," she said, forcing a small smile. "Busy day ahead. Don't wait up. I've got a board meeting that might run late." I nodded, my hands curled around the kitchen counter to keep them steady. "Work keeping you busy?" I asked. She was already halfway out the door. "Always," she said. And then, like a ghost, she was gone. The silence that followed felt like an exhale I'd been holding for months. I didn't follow her, didn't press her. I'd stopped asking questions when I realized silence told me more than words ever could. She thought I was still the same old Ryan. Quiet, predictable, the harmless consultant husband who never looked too closely. But Jessica never really knew who I was. That morning, I drove not to the small shared office space in the city I claimed to work from, but to the real one, hidden in a warehouse on the outskirts of Monterey Hills. No signs, no names, just a plain steel door that opened into my world, a room lined with glowing monitors and walls of data. This was where I built my life, in the shadows, far from Jessica's curated perfection. She didn't know it, but I owned the company she worked for. I had built it from scratch, bearing my ownership under layers of proxies and shell corporations. To her, I was a modest man. To the world, I was invisible. But I held all the strings. I sat down in my chair, opened the surveillance feed from her office, and there she was, at her desk, laughing, with him, Austin, 23, muscled, charismatic, the wellness coach she hired last year. They sat close, too close. Her hand brushed his arm with the kind of affection I hadn't felt in years. I didn't react. My pulse didn't quicken. Instead, a strange stillness took over, like a frozen lake. I watched for an hour, absorbing every smile, every shared glance, every touch. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was fact, proof, confirmation of what my heart had already whispered. But I didn't storm into her office. That's not who I am. I didn't scream or rage. I watched. I calculated. I waited. By evening, I was back in the house. The lily sat untouched on the table. My phone buzzed with a message from her. "Board meeting tonight. Don't wait up." There was no meeting. I knew that. I owned the building. There was no event scheduled, no late-night gathering of suits, just her and him, probably a corner booth, dim lights, a bottle of wine, maybe dessert. I texted back, "That's fine." No emotion, no hint of what I knew. I leaned back in the kitchen chair and listened to the clock ticking above the stove. Time? Moving forward? even as everything else stood still. She thought I was a shadow in her life, a man easily overlooked. But shadows see everything, and mine had just started to move. I didn't sleep that night, not really. Just drifted in and out on the bare mattress in the master suite of the Monterey Hills mansion, the room still echoing with newness. No furniture, no warmth, just space, silence, and purpose. Jessica had made her choice. Now I would make mine. At dawn, I brewed a pot of coffee and opened my laptop. The numbers blinked to life. Our shared bank accounts, credit cards, savings, all of it tied to my name, my work. She'd spent years thinking it was ours, but it was never hers to begin with. With a few clicks, I revoked her access. Cards frozen, pins changed, funds locked. I sipped my coffee, bitter and black, and thought about what would hit her first, the card decline, or the cold realization that she had no way to call Austin for help. He was never going to be her escape, just a thrill. A boy with charm and biceps, but no roots, no backbone. I knew his type, fleeting and flimsy. The second things turned difficult, he'd vanish. And he did. His number went dark hours after she called him in tears. By mid-morning, my private investigator sent an update. Jessica was stumbling home, still in the same hoodie she wore last night, her hair a mess, her steps unsteady. I watched through the security feed as her car pulled into the driveway of our old home in Maplewood. She got out, looked around, and froze. The house was nearly empty, furniture gone, photos missing, just enough left to echo what once was. The lilies still sat on the table, wilted now like the last flicker of us. Seconds later, my phone rang. Her name lit up the screen. I let it buzz twice before I answered. "Ryan, where the hell are you?" Her voice cracked, caught somewhere between anger and panic. I paused, then answered quietly, "Check your messages," and I hung up. I sent the photos next. Her and Austin at the restaurant, smiling over dessert, her hand resting on his. The caption read, "Enjoy your new life." I watched her reaction in real time through the feed. The color drained from her face. She slumped onto the couch, phone trembling in her hand. Then she stood, pacing, her voice rising as she argued with a credit card rep. Her purchases declined. A knock echoed through the living room. The realtor, punctual and poised, stepped inside holding a folder. Jessica's expression shifted from confusion to horror as she read the flyer. "For sale. Cash only. Immediate vacancy." Her voice cracked again. "He can't sell this. This is my house." But she knew. Deep down, she knew it wasn't. Not anymore. Outside, I watched as the realtor planted the sign on the lawn, a sharp white flag marking the end of her reign. When she called Austin again, begging for help, I had already tapped into his number. His tone was flat, distant. "Figure it out, Jess. I've got clients." The line went dead, just like everything else. The rain came softly the next morning, tapping against the wide windows of the Monterey Hills mansion like it was trying to wash the past away. I didn't check the cameras right away. I didn't need to. Jessica had stayed at the gate all night. My investigator had sent a message just after midnight. She's still there, refusing to leave. But I didn't feel triumph. Not exactly. I felt clarity. Jessica's story had ended, at least the part that included me. She had burned through everything, love, trust, stability, and now sat soaked, trembling, and alone in a world she thought she controlled. But the world had shifted. That morning, I dressed sharply, clean shirt, pressed slacks, no more living like a ghost. The sale of the company was finalized. A quiet deal, one I'd been structuring for weeks, 10 million, cash, a clean break, no more boardrooms, no more shadow games, just freedom. Lauren arrived around 10, rain dripping from her umbrella, a leather binder under her arm. She was calm, focused, as she always was, but something in her gaze had changed. Softer, warmer. "It's done," she said, setting the papers down on the dining table. "Transfers confirmed, staffs retained, your name's off everything." I looked at her, really looked at her. She'd been there for years, the quiet force behind so many victories, a witness to the storm and still standing, still here. "You're free," she added, a hint of a smile in her voice. "Free." The word tasted strange. For so long, I'd lived in the role Jessica needed me to play, safe, silent, unassuming. But I was none of those things. Not really. I'd built something massive, controlled an empire without being seen. And now I was stepping away, not in defeat, but by choice. Lauren gathered her papers, but I stopped her with a single question. Stay for coffee? She paused, surprised, then smiled. Sure. We sat at the kitchen island while the city outside softened beneath the drizzle. We talked, not about the company, not about Jessica, but about everything else. Music, memories, little joys neither of us had shared with anyone in a long time. Her laugh came, light and real, and it stirred something in me I hadn't felt in years. Not just relief, but hope. Later, we drove into the city, somewhere loud and messy, full of life. Over plates of pasta and steak, she told me she loved jazz and poetry and always wanted to learn how to rebuild an engine. I told her I used to fix old cars before all this began. We laughed. We lived. When we returned to the mansion, Jessica was still there, slumped by her car, soaked to the bone. Her eyes locked on mine as we drove past, hollow and pleading. But I didn't stop. Inside, I poured 2 mugs of coffee. Steam curled into the quiet. Lauren's hand brushed mine, and I didn't pull away. Jessica's chapter was closed, and for the first time in years, I wasn't looking back. As the days passed, the air in the mansion felt different, lighter, clearer, like it had been holding its breath for years and finally exhaled. Jessica never came back to the gate. Eventually, her car was towed, and the rain washed away the footprints she left behind. I didn't miss her. Not the version of her that lied, that took comfort for granted, that believed love was something you could trade for attention. But I did mourn the idea of us, the version that might have been if we'd both chosen differently. Still, I'd made peace with it. Some chapters aren't meant to last. Some people are only written into your story to teach you how to turn the page. Lauren stayed. Not just that day, but in all the days that followed. Her presence brought warmth back into my world. We didn't rush anything. There was healing to do. But little by little, we built something quiet and solid. A rhythm of laughter, conversation, and long walks through the hills with no need to fill the silence. We just were. And for the first time, that was enough. Sometimes life doesn't give you closure wrapped in neat bows. Sometimes it breaks you open so something new can grow in the cracks. I lost a marriage, but I found myself again. And in the calm that followed the storm, I found someone worth growing with. Maybe this isn't the end. Maybe it's just where a better story begins. If you connected with this story, if you felt the pain, the growth, the quiet strength, it would mean the world to us if you subscribe to our channel. Life Stories brings you tales that dig deep into the heart, stories of betrayal, resilience, love, and redemption. Hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and share where you're watching from. You just might hear your name in our next video. Until next time, stay strong, stay sharp, and keep turning the page.